Namaste. Welcome to our 68th talk on the Bhagavad Gita. We are ready to begin the 15th chapter called the Yoga of the Supreme Spirit. Krishna says, they speak of the Eternal Ashwattha Tree with roots above and branches below. Its leaves the Vedic hymns. He who knows it is a knower of the Vedas. What they're speaking about is creation. This whole aspect, but specifically our earth realm. But that's just a part of the whole cosmic system. And just as the tree comes up from the roots, is in a sense an emanation from the roots. So this cosmos is an emanation from the absolute, from the divine. God is the very root of the being of every one of us. But above, in the sense of this higher and subtler regions, with branches below, there would be different world systems which do exist. And then in this world, the leaves, the leaves have a process. They're not there for shade. The leaves are vital to the very life process of the tree. And it says his leaves are the Vedic hymns. Because you see, the Vedic hymns were not written by anyone. They are ascribed to what we call rishis. But a rishi means a seer, someone who is perceived. So these ancient sages were in tune with the roots of the universe. And they were aware that behind our objective perceptions, that those objects we perceive have subtler and subtler levels of being, just as you and I do. And that in the very lowest level, the inmost level, it is subtle Shakti, specifically Shabda, sound. And these energy patterns can be translated even into vocal sound. That which, when recited, strengthens and even empowers those subtler levels of being. Certainly, the Vedic hymns are often speak to or evoke various deities, but these deities are not really deities in the way that our Western background is, say Roman religion and even primitive religions. There's all these individuals and so on. Those do exist, but these are something deeper. They are principles of the existence itself. Agni means fire, and there is a deity, Agni, but there is an Agni principle. And therefore, though on a superficial level or a more superficial level, a hymn will evoke Varuna, Agni, Matarisman, Rudra, so on. On the deepest level, it invokes that power which manifests through all these various forms. Therefore, the recitation of the Veda strengthens the very existence of the cosmos itself. And hearing the Vedas strengthens our whole complex of being, from most subtle to most objective. So the Vedas are healing, they're empowering, they're also correcting. In case the vibratory pattern of the cosmos has gotten a little fuzzy, out of focus, or a little off, a little lopsided, we might say, these Vedic hymns put them back on track. So you see how important they are. And sad to say, the Vedas are almost, comparative speaking to the higher ages, almost totally neglected today. This is a great crime against the entire range of life and of evolution. But this now is so. So they nourish the life. So if you know various institutions, organizations, or even individuals who follow Sanatana Dharma, who follow Ved Dharma, who recite the Vedas, and who perform the Havan, the fire sacrifice, with the Vedic mantras, that is, putting the offerings in to the sacred consecrated fire uh, as they're recited, or as the offering mantra Swaha is intoned. It brings about the welfare of all beings and ultimately the welfare of the whole complex of the worlds. Therefore, the Vedas have even been called Shabda Brahman, sound God, sound infinite being. And it's not an exaggeration. It's not just a poetic kind of encomium. It is straight fact. Therefore, it is good. Now, mostly I'm going to be speaking, I think, to Americans, but to Americans and to quite a number of people from Bharat. Uh, Seek out those who are rooted in the Vedas, those institutions, those groups who are rooted in the Vedas and who still practice the Vedic samskaras, that is, the rituals, which start with us preconception even, and then go clear to even then beyond our earthly death and upward. Because this can be done. The Arya Samaj, for example, is one such very noble and very honorable institution that I've had contact with and have been uplifted myself through that association. And there are other groups also. So those who are Vedic centered, let's say that they're very safe to associate with because they will be continually on the beam, sort of the sound beam that comes down from the highest. You see, it's all right to talk about bhakti, about devotion, and so on, but that's just in our head and in our heart. That's not in the cosmos at all. But the Vedic tradition perfects, tones up and perfects from the deepest level of our being and the deepest level of the cosmos to the most subjective levels. The word holistic was a buzzword some decades back in America. Well, holistic Sanatana Dharma is holistic Dharma because it's based on the Vedas. But as an individual, if you're not centered in the Vedas, well, you might just well be in Fiji and worship a tree. I mean, face realities. So those who even know Brahman know the Vedas. This it, which is known, is both the range of the cosmos and the consciousness within it. So the Vedas are a key. Below, above, its branches spread afar, nourished by the gunas. In this case, it means the energies which then reflect or embody the gunas. Its buds are the sense objects. And then when they open up, the fruit or flower or whatever comes forth. So the sense objects are what evoke our experience in the world around us. And in the world of men below, its roots engender action. Now, the action is way down here in the world of humans, but it originates in the roots, in Brahman itself. This is why karma or karma yoga can lead to enlightenment, because it's just a perfect, total, interrelated complex. They say in India, for example, some plants, the roots sort of come together and form a kind of a glob or a ball. And they say as a simile, if you just pull one part of that clump toward you, the whole clump comes toward you. And therefore, we have to one, take a hold of something that will give a much bigger result than we think it will, such as a simple mantra, japa of the mantra, meditation of the mantra. I mean, even monkeys sit with their eyes closed. So the yogi, he's doing the same. Even monkeys can do it. But the japa, the mantra, that puts him in a realm absolutely transcendent, of course, compared to the monkey. But from the highest does come action, and through action, a connection with the highest, an affinity with the highest. Following the law, we come into affinity with the lawgiver. Good. Third verse. Its form is not perceptible here in the world. That's an understatement. Obviously, the absolute and the absolute realm is not. Nor its end, nor its beginning. In other words, this is not where it ends. Like, well, it comes down this far and stops. No, it goes beyond what we could possibly see. So we're in the middle, and above and below us is virtually an infinite realm that we don't even perceive. Nor its foundation. In other words, the absolute bedrock, of course, is what? But consciousness itself, the infinite consciousness. Well, so of course, in this world, it isn't perceptible. Cutting this firm-rooted Ashwattha tree with the strong acts of non-attachment, and it's non-attachment that does it, not like I've got to get rid of ignorance, I've got to get rid of an affinity for bad deeds. No, you got to find out because see, you can say that and you don't really mean to get rid of it. And you can say, well, I'm a weak human being, what will I do? But this is saying, get to the root of it and cut it off. Otherwise, all our aspiration is just talk. And you do it by not touching it, just keeping away from it. It's just like our so-called baby teeth or milk teeth. When the time came for our permanent teeth to grow in, the roots of the baby teeth literally dissolved, and then look, the tooth came out. Sometimes with a little help, but in a sense, they detach themselves. And therefore, the acts of non-attachment frees us. Then that place is to be sought, which having gone, they, the various entities, the various atmas in incarnation, do not return again, because we bounce back and forth like a little rubber ball. Or like, remember the little paddles that had the long elastic kind of string and then a little ball, and you kept hitting it and hitting it. And well, that's exactly what the whole process of birth and death is like for us down here in the world. You get impelled out, boom, you go back, impelled back. So no matter how much you go back, instead of staying there, click, your karma bats you back right back again. So we want to know that sthana, that place of being established, which is consciousness, a place of consciousness, a level of consciousness, which then, when we're leaving all this relative hurry-burry stuff, we don't come back again. No return trip ticket. And then it gives, with Sanskrit type of quotation marks, in that primeval Purusha from which streamed forth the ancient power. The Purusha, that from which the primal Prakriti, Shakti, in that primeval Purusha from which streamed forth the ancient power, I take refuge. And there only. Taking refuge in religion doesn't do it. Taking refuge in philosophical knowledge doesn't do it. Because, see, you can't take refuge there. Like the old song says, there's no hiding place down there. In these down here things, there is no place of refuge. We have to take refuge in the absolute top and highest. Without pride or delusion, with the evil of attachment conquered. In other words, we can say, no, I will not attach. Not like, oh, I just kind of saw through it all and therefore I'm no longer attached. No, because sad, look at the people that know that alcohol is destroying them, that nicotine is destroying them, and they keep on destroying themselves by using it. So I remember a psychiatrist saying one time in a class I took, insight has a very poor track record. Because most people, like in psychoanalysis, they think, oh, once I see it, once I have that insight, then it won't have any effect on me. But it doesn't really work that way. It isn't how you see, it's how you are. Therefore, constantly dwelling in the self. In other words, this is through sadhana. There's nobody else dwelling in the self but the sadhaka, and then the one who's attained self-realization. But they both are dwelling in the self as long as you are doing the japa meditation, because back to my common reference, remember, in the beginning there was only the Purusha, and the Purusha first said, Soham asmi, I am Soham. So only those that are doing the japa, Soham in time with the breath, so when we inhale, hum when we exhale in the mind, and does it both through their activities and then when they sit for meditation, they alone are dwelling in self. But you see, here's a piece of paper. Well, I can just take it by the edge and hold on to it. Okay? May have fallen down, but hold on. So the woman that had the constant hemorrhaging, and Jesus came by, she said in herself, if I can just touch the hem of his garment, I'll be cured. And she did, and she was cured. So if we just even touch the hem of Brahman through the japa, through the meditation, we shall be healed. We shall be at peace. We shall be safe. But it has to be constant, not just a little bit and the no more. we're very good at deluding ourselves by pretending to be noble. And my first trip to Bharat, I was staying at an ashram in the Himalayan foothills, and someone came and said, "Oh, there's another American has come here, and he's just staying down at such and such." So I told him about you, so I expect to come to visit you, and he did. A very fine person. We became very good friends, and he had been to Bharat before, and and practiced meditation and so on, japa meditation. Well, anyway, there be some times in our association where usually it was when we were just together in my kutir or his. Kutir means a little cottage, a little small building where you live and you do sadhana. And even maybe walking along. And he'd say, "Oh, I haven't been saying my mantra. Oh, why? I've got to do it. Why don't I put my mind on it? I've tried so hard." And he'd go, blah, 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 rather than shut up and say the mantra because he likes not having said it. That's why. Way deep in his mind. You see, the real problem we also have is us. As the Pogo character said, we've met the enemy and he is us. Us, of course, meaning our ego, but the conditionings our ego has put into us. So there are people that repent and repent and repent because it's much easier to regret and repent than it is to reform. So we must be sure we don't fall into that nonsense. So constantly dwelling in the self, not in like, "Oh, how could I?" With desires dispelled, we sent them away. I mean, nobody, there were toys we played with for hours as a child. And I had a thing called a pound a peg. It was this little wooden, there was a board and then two vertical, I mean, horizontal and then two vertical sides. And then these little wooden pegs were in it. And I had a wooden mallet, and you pounded it down, and they went all the way down to just the upper surface, and then you turned it over again and you pounded it again. I was fascinated with it. I did a lot. I liked it. Imagine. Remember, people, I don't know about what it's like now, but when I was, we had little model autos, and we'd, get down on the floor, go, we several of them would play with it. And I had friends would say, "You want to go over to my house and play cars?" So we did, and we enjoyed ourselves. It was fine, but not now. Hopefully, not now. Though we still have the little boys that do have various forms of their playing cars. But anyway, with that dispelled, so sent away, it no longer means anything to us. We grew up. I hope there's no one that would still like to put a bottle of milk in their mouth and with a nipple and drink on like they did as a baby. Freed from the pairs of opposites known as pleasure and pain, those things. Because you see, everything else, uh, relatively, either is painful or uncomfortable or unsettling or unpleasant or pleasant and really happiness giving or even joyful giving and so on. Exhilarating, giving exhilarations. So there are those two types that do this: sukha, dukkha, ease and happiness; dukkha, pain and so being unsettled, being uncomfortable, um, and freed from that, so that nothing can make that arise in you. You see, Yogi Raj Shamacharya Lahiri had children. He had a beloved child, a boy. He had more than one child, but he had one, who became ill and who was in the upper floors of his house there in Varanasi, in Benares. And that was a place where, of course, his mother and he had some female relatives, and they were there looking after him. Yogaraj was downstairs in the little parlor that we read about in Autobiography of a Yogi, an interesting, tiny little room, which is only, I'd say, hardly 8 or 9 feet, certainly no more than 10 feet. I don't think it is 10 feet wide, and then about 30 feet long. You wonder who built this house, who made it. But there it was. It was so small that they knocked out one of the walls, uh, the small side of the room that was at the end of the house, and then just put all these bars there so that people had to stand or sit outside just to see Yogaraj sitting there. So anyway, having said all that, back to the story. So they were down there, these people, they were all men, because in India that's a custom as a rule. And the women folk were upstairs. And suddenly from above, they began to hear all this weeping, wailing, uh, in East, they make a lot more noise when people die than we usually do. And so they heard all this kind of hubbub from upstairs of misery, crying. And it is the tradition uh, in Vedic Dharma that when someone dies, then people leave. They go away from they don't bother them. Because you're connected, you have all kinds of psychic connections with your relatives as well as the people you just love. And when they die, there is a disturbance in your whole auric body, in your energy levels. And therefore, you should be to yourself, hopefully do japa and meditation to adjust. It's like being healed from a wound. So anyway, when this sound came from above, the disciples said, well, should we leave? He said, no. He said, they're doing their duty, their dharma, and we're down here doing our duty, our dharma. This is the truth of things, that we realize what is our dharma, and then it finishes, the undeluded reach the eternal goal. There we are. Home at last, no longer out on the heaving sea, the ocean of samsara, but where we are, where we really were all along, but we forgot. We didn't know it. And so I've gone over the time as is usual. And we will continue, which has a little bit of description of, well, what is that place where we end up? So then, until then, namaste, namaste. Thank you.